Okay, so so basically what the Lab MSA tool does is it gives you the ability to import lab pricing, and it also gives you the ability to track sort of sample completeness and where you are in your invoices and things like that. So I'm going to go to Lab MSAs, and what we did is we just set up one master service agreement for Test America, and we've got beginning and end dates. So when your samples come in, if they're under a different contract scenario, the program will automatically apply the pricing that applies to it. And I can have as many of these as I want. If I want to add another lab, I can just do that. And what we did here is we just the lab gave us a file with pricing on it, and obviously they have different prices for aqueous and solid, and sometimes they have some other kind of price which I've never really used, but we imported the lab's terminology, and then we assigned analytic methods from our method table to it. So the lab calls it oil and grease. We're calling it 1664. Some are the same. Some of these I haven't really filled out yet, but so for example, for explosives, if I want to associate with a method, I can just pull one from my methods table. And so when you import or you apply pricing to your samples, it's looking at the method ID and it's comparing to what you have in the table. And then there's a second set of this, and it's called lab add-ons, and it's really just for miscellaneous pricing. And we give the ability to put prices on and calculate by delivery group or say per sample. I think there's a sample and method option. And then analytic method, normally for these kind of tasks, their method is not applied, but if you had one that was only specific to a method, you could select that. So there's enough flexibility built in to handle just about anything. Where we don't have a price here, it's an add-on, but the lab didn't have a price for it. We've got prices for some things that are pretty common. So back in my project, and this is projects, it's the same scenario of projects that we set up for validation. Is we're just giving you the ability to organize delivery groups, but we also, on the right-hand side, can just take a look at where our invoicing is. And what I can do, I only have one Lab MSA here, but I can make a report that basically tells me by delivery group what's been applied. And right now I've only really assigned one delivery group to this project. So we'll come back to this because we're going to import some data. But back on managing delivery groups, I can come to this form. I have a project named import test, and I can add as many delivery groups as I want to this project, and I can go to one that's already assigned. And so here I've imported the delivery group, and I've filled out the invoice information for it. So the invoice total here, the invoice number, dates, and all that. You can type these in, or you can import them from Excel, and the invoice total is the actual invoice total. So when I run the report, it's calculating my number of samples and my method that I set up that I selected from my Lab MSA. And I've also got an add-on here, so I'm just gonna run a report, and I have to put it somewhere. And I'm just going to call it MSA 0. And it just gives me a little summary of my delivery group. And if I had more methods, this particular input only had one method to it, 10 samples, and it just does arithmetic for you. The top part of it is the specific methods from the main Lab MSA form, and then a section on add-ons. And my total was 102.50, and so I can just come back and compare. And okay, so we can account for everything in the invoice. Let's say though, my total wasn't 102.50. Maybe I'm missing some samples, or maybe with that STG they didn't apply all the methods, and so that's just a kind of a quick way to find out if there's discrepancy in your data or if there's completeness issues with it. But the hard part of it for historical data, you probably wouldn't want to mess with this, but you can choose SDGs from your analysis table. And then this button here shows me all the delivery groups that have been applied to that MSA. So I'm going to go and we're going to import another file. And we're using invoice test, our only project here. And we're going to apply the Test America invoice. So I'm just going to select a file. Hope I put this where I can find it. I'm going to import it. And it's going to populate the delivery group for me and do the math for me, but I still need to fill out the specifics from the invoice. So I'm going to go back to projects and manage delivery groups. And we're going to find that one. And so here again, it's the 10 samples, solid, the same method. I'm going to select an add-on for it. And we'll go with the level 4. And then here I would just enter my invoice number and my dates and my total. And again, the total is going to come from your invoice. And so if I just leave that blank, it's not gonna try to populate it. And we're going to call this, let's say 3. And it makes me the same type of summary. And then if I can go back to my main projects form, now I'm going to look at all my delivery groups for this summary. And so this part here again, these columns you would fill in from the invoice itself, and this is just showing me that STG has been imported. And that's all. It's a handy tool. We don't have a lot of users, but the 2 or 3 that are using it, they mainly use it for completeness checking and just making sure that every invoice is accounted for.